a new record of number of minutes again.
I'd like to call the Budget and Finance Committee meeting of January 23rd, 2019 to order. It is 5:34 p.m. And I'd like to thank everyone for coming and joining us for the meeting. Before I get into the agenda, I would like to just have an explanation with regard to what's needed for a quorum in this committee, because I know I had a different idea as to the Budget Committee because it's a committee of the whole. We made a change last year in our bylaws, and now for a quorum to exist, we have to have the budget members, the actual members of the committee here, before we can start the meeting. I think we're going to suggest a different change to where it was before when we look at the bylaws this year, so that a majority of the board members present will constitute a quorum, and therefore we can start the meeting. Okay? So right now, as it stands, until we approve any changes to our bylaws, we can't start the meeting until the members of the Budget Committee who were assigned are here. And that's Sherry, myself, Ms. Oliver, and it was Katrina Daniels, whose last attendance was in December. So we will have a new board member that will join us hopefully soon. So just wanted to lay that out so that we don't have any confusion, because I know when I first became a board member, it was just a quorum of the board that we could start our budget meeting. So that's the way it'll stand until we see an approval of the new bylaws, or revised bylaws. Okay. All right. Items on the agenda that will not be discussed tonight are item number 5, item number 7, item number 8, and item number 9. And those items are: number 5, receive and discuss a report of the December 2018 financial statements for the Community Care Collaborative. Item number 7, discuss and take appropriate action on the 1115 Medicaid waiver, delivery system reform incentive payment projects, the Community Care Collaborative, including healthcare delivery arrangements and other related community partnerships. Number 8, discuss and take appropriate action on Central Health owned and occupied real property, including downtown campus and properties located in eastern Travis County. And item number 9, discuss and take appropriate action on an update regarding Sendero Health Plans Incorporated, including the effect of federal legislative and regulatory actions. So, with that said, I would like to lay out agenda item number 1, approve the minutes of the following meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee, December 12th, 2018. Do I have a motion?
We have a motion. I move that the committee approve the minutes for the following meeting of the Central Board of Managers Budget and Finance Committee for December 12th, 2018.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Valadez, a second by Ms. Greenberg. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 2, receive and discuss and take appropriate action on a presentation from Southwest Retirement Consultants and Branch Banking and Trust, BB&T Company, on the quarterly investment results of the Travis County Healthcare District Retirement Plan and 457 Deferred Compensation Plan. And I'm going to turn the floor over to Jeff, and he'll make the introduction.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bell. Let me kick this off quickly, and I'll quickly turn it over. There's a memo in your packet that we included. BB&T is the enterprise, and when I say enterprise, the Central Health, Community Care, Sendero, and the CCC All of the employees participate in our retirement plan and our deferred 457 deferred comp plan. BB&T is the plan administrator for those plans for our employees. On a quarterly basis, they come and do updates related to the systems. And they also make potential fund recommendations for funds that are currently in the plan. They will propose and recommend certain changes in the plan. And that's the case tonight. There are, in the memo that we laid out, there are a few fund changes that will be proposed this evening. Staff has looked over the proposed changes, and we have a consultant, John McLaughlin, with Southwest Retirement Systems, that also has reviewed the proposed changes, and both staff and John recommend that those changes be considered and approved by the board. For the presentation that I'm going to turn over with BB&T, Zach Wally and Lisa Hayworth will be doing the presentation. This is actually Lisa's, is it your last day or last meet? I'll say last meeting, let's shall say. Being directly associated with our account, Denise Prince, who's in the back here, will be taking her place. So I just wanted to introduce Denise real quick. You'll see her in future presentations. But with that, I'll turn it over to you guys for the presentation.
Great. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you guys for having us this evening and appreciate being here. So let me talk just real quickly because as Jeff and I talked before, some folks may be opening a statement and saying what happened in the fourth quarter with the markets, right? You had a great start to the year last year in the equity markets, then February came around, you had a dip, and then you had a great run through the third quarter. And then the fourth quarter of the year had a lot of volatility and the equity markets were down. So let's take a step back and look at that and say, okay, so the S&P 500 index last year was down for the year just over 4.3%, and the Dow was down 3.48%. Well, since the start of this year, we've had three of the best weeks we've had in a long time. The S&P is up about 6.5% so far. The Dow's up about 6%. Now, granted, today I realize the market's dropped about 170 points, so these numbers you might alter, but somewhere in that ballpark. So that's the best start we've had to the market since 1987. I don't want to put a curse on anything. For those of us that were alive in 1987, remember what happened later in the year in 1987. But it's the best start we've had since 1987. So when you look at it, you've gained back what you lost already, basically, or close to it in the first 3 weeks. So it's just something to keep an eye on. But if you hear people talking about it, I just wanted you to be aware of that. And a number of sectors that were beaten up last year, like energy, have recovered very well so far to start this year off the banking sectors and those types of things. So I'd be happy to answer any other questions on the economy or the markets. And if I had a crystal ball as to what the Federal Reserve was going to do this year, we could all go to the Bahamas with big, fat, tax-free bank accounts. I just don't have that. But the futures market right now says that the Fed is not going to raise rates this year. The Fed has still said they may raise rates 1 or 2 times. So somebody's wrong, and we'll figure it's like 2 children at my house. There's going to be an argument. Somebody's going to be wrong at some point, so we'll deal with that, but we'll see what happens. But in the bond market last year literally finished the year flat at 0.0% return on the aggregate index. So I wanted to start with that. Next, I'd like to talk just about the fund changes that Jeff mentioned. You have a couple of decks in front of you. We have some timber clients. We don't like to disappoint them, so we printed some copies for you guys. If you'll take a look at the one Travis County Healthcare District Retirement Plan Investment Summary Report, it'll be the thicker, one of the thicker ones.
Bound in wire.
Yeah, it's got wire bound. So you have 2 reports because there are 2 plans. Everything's the same in each report other than the fact the dollar figure invested in each fund. So they're the same. So if you'll take a look and flip over, there are a couple of fund changes I wanted to talk about with you and just go through some explanations. So if you'll flip to page 20, let's see here. We can start on page 24, and this will just walk through the monitoring report in the plan of the funds. So on page 24, you'll see the Vanguard 500 index there at the top. You'll see a lot of green checks for all the categories that we quantitatively go over for each one. And you'll see a score over on the right of 89. Thank goodness this isn't high school chemistry class. You need to have an 85 to pass. I was begging for points to get there, but that's where it is to pass score-wise. On page 25, you'll see all the target date funds that are used for the plans. They all score 85 or better and are passing. On page 26, one of the fund changes that we're suggesting that was in the memo, you will see there the Vanguard Intermediate Term Treasury Fund, and you'll see some red X's there where that fund is underperformed a little bit recently, and you'll see the score of 75 over on the far right. We are suggesting replacing that fund with another government-focused treasury type fund in the American Funds U.S. Government Securities Fund. And one of the reasons is I've typed out the notes there underneath the Vanguard Intermediate Treasury Fund. It has struggled recently, and it is mainly always focused on treasuries only and in the 5 to 10 year maturity range. And a lot of treasury funds and government-only funds have gone, some of them that have done even better in the peer group have been very focused on mortgage-backed securities. We don't want somebody that's just focused on mortgage-backs only, but we want to give somebody the ability to do something outside of treasuries, mainly in that 5 to 10 years we go forward and the market has changed. So that's one of the reasons for that change in the recent underperformance. If you'll take a look on page 27 in the report, there is a fund there that just has a cheaper share class. So we're going to use the same fund. That's the Oakmark Investor, the third fund down. And it just has a cheaper share class available. So we just, whenever a cheaper share class becomes available, we just want to shift to that for your participants to have access to the lowest cost share class that's available. So that is simply just a change to a cheaper share class. A little bit further down the page, you have the AMG Managers Fairpoint Fund. And what happened with this fund, it's had some underperformance, but it also shifted categories. So in other words, we hired them to be in the mid-cap blend space. So they're supposed to buy mid-cap growth and value stocks to create a blend fund. They've drifted over to being a mid-cap value fund. Okay, so when you think about it, here's how we hired you. Now you're over here buying stocks just over here. Your average participant's not going to get as nerdy as I do and tie a bow tie and get down into it and figure all that out, right? So in order to help them, that's one of the reasons we'll make the change. So this fund had style drift, so we'd like to replace it with the Vanguard Strategic Equity Fund. You'll see the score of 100 there, and it is in the mid-cap blend space. And then right underneath that, the John Hancock Disciplined Mid-Cap Value Fund went over to the mid-cap blend space. So we had a very unique situation that your mid-cap value manager went to blend and your mid-cap blend manager went to value. So we're looking to replace those two with style pure folks. So that is that change. And then on page 28, the one other change is the Hartford Mid-Cap Growth Fund you currently use has a cheaper share class available as well.
Can I stop just a second? Right?
Sure.
Yeah, you're using terms that people that, even that are lay people type investors may not understand. So for example, drift and style drift.
Sure, I'd be happy to address that.
Try to
Sure.
cover some of that as you move through your presentation. Thank you.
Sure. So in terms of style drift, if I say I'm going to go out and buy mid-cap value stocks, I'm expected to buy stocks that have a certain market capitalization or value that are in a certain range considered in the mid-cap range. You have small caps, mid-caps, and large caps. So they're supposed to be here. And then they're supposed to be value stocks. So what the mid-cap value gentleman was doing when he shifted categories over to blend, he was buying mid-cap growth stocks, and at some point it became, when you looked at the percentage of the portfolio, it was no longer heavily weighted to mid-cap value stocks. He was now in the mid-cap blend space. So as your consultant and a portfolio manager that oversees and looks at what the managers are doing and has conversations with them, we have a concern because we hired you to do this and now you're not doing it. Is that a better explanation
I'll defer to the board.
for everybody to understand?
Can I, so on page 30, on the same report, there's a nice little
Oh, yeah.
graphic that shows the different mixes and the different styles of investments. And I think if I was going to summarize what Zach said, I would just say that this is a grid where you hire an investment manager to stay in their space, their portion of the grid, And if we have an investment option that transitions into another grid, there's not as much diversity in the overall investment selection that we want to offer our employees. So this is kind of a graphical way of looking into explanation.
That's exactly right. That's a good, solid picture in a way.
And the other thing we want to be certain that we're mindful of is that we're telling participants, when you buy this fund, this is what you're getting. So they're trusting that that's what they're buying, and then if the manager starts to move out of that, they may still be in something that they don't understand, that that's what they bought, all of a sudden it's changed from what they thought they were getting.
And the solid example is that if you look at in the mid-cap blend space on the chart Jeff just referenced, mid-cap blend, it says John Hancock Disciplined Value Mid-Cap Fund. So the title of that fund is mid-cap value, but he's in the blend space. You follow me? So that's just another example as a visually way to see the style drift there. So those are the three actual fund changes, and then there are the two just to the lower share classes where available, those lower cost share classes to shift to. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. First of all, what we want,
Should
Oh,
we
I'm
wait
sorry,
and
you-
have questions
okay,
at the
okay.
end?
Okay.
Yeah, so we need to get it through.
One other
this.
thing, does everybody understand what we mean when we say a lower share class?
Lower cost, in other words, the cost of
It's the same fund, they're just going to offer it to us, charging us
Charging less.
less
Less.
expenses.
Correct.
So that's the only change there.
Thank you.
correct.
Please.
Okay, so that is what I had, and Lisa had some statistics to present on the plan to the committee as well. So it's up to you if you want to, do you want Lisa to do the statistics, and then we can do a question on the whole?
Sure.
Okay. And I am in the plastic-bound presentation that looks like this.
What
does it say on the front? It says Travis County
deferred
Care
compensation.
District Retirement Plan and Deferred Compensation Plan.
The skinny one, right?
Yes, it's the thin one. Right. And if you'll open to the page right past the title page, this just shows you a summary of the retirement plan. We took a look at the numbers from 12/31/2017 versus 12/31/2018. And you'll see the plan has grown by about 1.3 million. We've got about 70 additional participants in the plan. The total number of accounts has grown by about 139. Average balances are slightly down from where they were a year ago, but that can be attributable to the fact that we've added bodies who start out at a zero balance, so it's going to drive the average down. Below that, you'll see numbers on people that have access to ProInvest. ProInvest is simply an outside firm that we partner with that will provide an individual investment advice to those participants who are interested in it. So we've had 97 participants who have actually gone through the planner and gotten some information on how they should invest their assets. 27 of those have actually hired ProInvest to manage their assets for them. There's about 2.5, almost 2.6 million of assets that ProInvest is currently managing, and it's about 3% of your eligible population, about 5% of overall plan assets. Directly below that, you'll see you've got 259 loans which are currently outstanding to the tune of about 1.6 billion. It's about 3.5% of your overall plan assets, which is a little bit high. We'd like to see that number lower. However, I will say that the plan does not have the ability for a participant to take withdrawals for any hardship reasons. So that may be driving the loan number a little bit higher because they need to access their money, and so they're taking a loan instead. And then directly below that, you'll see you've got about 70% of your participants who have chosen one fund only, but you'll see that 68% of those are in the balanced fund, which is the fund that has a mix of both stocks, bonds, and cash, so it's sort of a pre-mixed option for participants. And that's actually where participants are defaulted when they are automatically enrolled in the plan. So we're seeing a lot of inertia, if you will, that folks get put in there and they stay there. And then the page directly behind that will show you how your plan is allocated asset-wise. There's a pictorial picture at the top with the two pie charts, and then detailed information down below that. And again, the highlighted fund in blue is that default option. And again, you'll see 59% of the plan assets are in there. Up on the right, left side corner, you'll see that overall, there's about just under 4% in cash, about 35% in fixed income, which also includes outstanding loan balances, and then just over 60% in equity, which does also include your real estate fund. And then the final page behind that just gives you a summary of the deferred compensation of 457 plan. Assets are slightly down in that plan, although the number of eligible participants is up. And you'll see that there has been a reduction of one terminated employee. Total accounts are 326. And again, your average balance has gone down some. I would guess that's both a result of additional bodies coming in, again, at a zero balance, as well as some of the assets being taken out of the plan. In terms of loans outstanding under that plan, again, about 1.1% of assets, so significantly below the percentage of the retirement plan. And then again, below that, you'll see about 15% of the participants have chosen that balanced option. That is the default option in this plan as well. And then finally, in summary, on the following page, on an overall asset allocation basis, this plan is about 7% in cash, about 25% in fixed income, and almost 68% in equities. We haven't seen a whole bunch of change there in those numbers from the prior year. And then I just have some general information about the plan, what has occurred within the plan over the last year, some information on fees, and then some of the improvements that BB&T has made to our systems.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you for all of the information. I'd like to open it up. Jeff, did you have any closing
I was just going to
statements?
say that that concludes our presentation, and we would offer up our recommendations for the board to consider these changes
Okay.
to both our 457 and our retirement plan.
Thank you very much. So what I'd like to do is get a motion on the floor first. So I would like to have a motion and a second.
Okay.
Ms. Greenberg?
I move that the committee recommend the board approve fund change recommendations from Branch Banking and Trust Company for the Travis County Healthcare District Retirement Plan and 457 Deferred Compensation Plan.
And do I have a second? Madam? So I have a motion by Ms. Greenberg, second by Ms. Musatar. Any discussion? And we can now ask questions. Sharon?
Just a couple questions. You were getting at one of mine, which was the discussion regarding options for our employees and the percent that are in the default plan versus choosing a specific plan. With the specific plan, what kind of counseling do they get on investing and investment options?
It actually takes them through a personalized planner.
Okay.
So it looks at what they're currently putting into the plan,
Right.
what their current balance is, what their age is, asks them if they have assets invested elsewhere. Do they want to include Social Security? Do they want to
Okay.
include their spouse?
Does it go through the questions on what I call the risk versus reward? You know, people have a different appetite, and
Yes.
riskier investments, you get
Yes.
higher reward and vice versa?
Absolutely. That's part of
Okay.
the equation.
That is part of the equation? Okay, good, because with our employees, as you know, as we know, we do not have a defined benefit plan. It's just a defined contribution plan, so what they have is what they have. In general, if they choose the default plan, what is the scoring or the kind of ratio there, risk versus reward? How would you score that plan overall?
So the balance fund that they
Yeah.
default to?
Maybe that's in here somewhere,
It
but,
is, but I can tell you real quickly, just one second, I can get to that page. But, so that plan is about, it's basically a 50-50 plan, 50% fixed income and 50% in stocks.
right, I understand that, but I'm
Right.
saying, typically when you go through this, if, you know, when I was asking the questions about the counseling they're getting, you get some sense of their risk versus reward, and then balance their plan according to their, how much they want on income versus if they're looking at retirement age, and kind of come up, with the balance there. How is this one? You're saying 50-50, how would that
So
equate?
there are two different ways to answer that. So
Right.
for it, you have to we educate participants the best we can and give them
Right.
tools to do all that, but they have to be semi-proactive. In other words, when we say the balance fund that's 50-50,
Right.
so that's the approved default fund
Yes.
that the government, everybody says you can use. So anybody
Yes.
that comes into the plan is automatically defaulted there, no
Unless
matter
they-
what their risk tolerance is.
Right.
Then they have to take a step to say, to start to fill out a questionnaire or do anything. Then when they do that, it will allocate them out to a number of other funds
Okay.
or another allocation.
Okay, that's my question.
According to
Yes.
what their true risk tolerance is. So some people might be in the balance fund, and this is why we try to
Right.
continually do education and send
That was my
flyers
question.
and emails
Okay.
to say, make sure you're checking on this on your birthday, make sure you're looking
Okay.
up where you are. Do you need to increase your dollars? So that there are people that are defaulted there that may never touch it or do anything.
Okay,
and
you
that-
answered my question.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Valadez, did you have a question?
Well, my second question will be with respect to follow up on what Sherry was talking about. And that was, I'm looking at the numbers, but the first one, I was just listening to a presentation on the radio, and they were talking about investments in corporations that are actively recruiting and moving up women, or investing in green, the green
Socially
market.
responsible.
Yes.
There are,
And I was wondering whether, and since we're in the healthcare business, investing in the healthcare business. So is that what we're doing?
so I can answer that a couple different ways. You do not have any purely socially responsible funds within this portfolio. We can bring, next time we come, we can bring to the table for you to look at a socially responsible equity fund if you would like. Some of those funds are very small dollar-wise and are startup-type funds. And the issue you run into when you have a plan of $60+ million is if you were to all of a sudden, if those mutual funds are not of the size to handle that, we cannot, in a fiduciary capacity, tell you as a board to use that because of the
Right.
fact that it's only got $10 million in it and you could dump 15 in and then you own. So we can look at that. On your second question in terms of healthcare, we can look for you, if you would like to look at putting a healthcare sector fund in. Here's the issue that you run into. The S&P 500 index that you use is currently around 17 or 18% in healthcare already. The problem we see and what we saw in years past, especially when the technology bubble burst, you can see I lost a few hairs. I've been around for a little bit and they're gray too. But when the technology bubble burst, the problem was people didn't realize how much each sector made up. So they would go out and say, oh, I want healthcare, and this S&P fund and this mid-cap value fund, they must be different. And then the healthcare sector takes a downturn, and they take a big downturn here and here and here, whereas a S&P 500 fund covers all the sectors. So I'm happy to let you have, if the board would like a healthcare sector fund, I can bring one for you to look at and consider. But that's our concern, that the average participant, again, as you pointed out earlier, sir, doesn't delve down far enough to realize that and will dump, oh, I'll put 50% in healthcare and 50% in the S&P 500, and then they're overweight healthcare.
No, I understand the need to
Right.
diversify.
Right.
But the pharmaceutical industry never seems to be hurting. And
Right, and you
that's why
have
I
that
was-
exposure.
That's why I was wondering.
Right, right, and you definitely have that exposure through a number of these funds, but it's a diversified exposure through those funds to that
Something else to
industry.
keep in mind is that as fiduciaries to the plan, you have to consider the good for the whole, not for necessarily specific individuals or specific wants. And the problem with a sector fund in an industry where people are working is that's what they know. And so you might have somebody who doesn't really understand investing, but they know healthcare, so they put 100% of their money in healthcare. The market takes a dive, or healthcare takes a dive, and then they're really in trouble.
I appreciate that, thank you.
No
And-
problem.
And
Thank you, Beth.
then, I guess that was my first one. The second one
Okay.
really was, okay, and looking at that, as of 12/31/18, eligible participants was 948, terminated accounts, that means what, they're no longer participating?
It means they
47?
have left employment, but they've left their account balance with the plan.
Okay, so that's why I was looking at these numbers, and do we know what range of, Mike, do we know what range of employee is participating? At which levels, do we know that? I was curious, because I don't know if it makes a difference, but I just want to make sure that our employees who are remaining are investing well, and that they're benefiting. But sometimes it's not everybody, like if you don't have extra money, to risk or to invest, then you don't. And I was just curious as to where we lay with all our
I
employees.
haven't seen a breakdown on that dimension, but you all may have that information.
Well, the retirement plan is a mandatory plan.
Right,
So everybody's in it. After 120 days, it's 6%. And there's no opting out. So anybody who has been here for 120 days is putting 6% into this plan.
Okay, as if it was Social Security. I like Social Security, yeah.
Right.
Right.
Okay,
Now, the thing we work on with education and communication with participants is getting them to also put money in the 457.
correct,
Because they're missing the match if they're not doing that.
yeah.
And we do see when we do get in front of individuals when we come out that we are successful in getting people to understand what they're missing and sign up for it. So that is our focus.
Okay, I appreciate it. I just want to make sure that our employees are being taken care of well, and that they understand what the options and the risks are, as Sherry was alluding to.
Right.
Thank you very much.
No problem, thank you.
Thank you. Jeff?
Can I just make one more comment, Sherry, to
Yes.
your, just Manager Greenberg, to your question? BB&T also offers what are called retirement target funds.
Yes,
And so the advantage of those is if an employee doesn't want to actively manage their funds, they
Right.
can pick a projected retirement date.
Yep.
And kind of within that portfolio, the risk tolerance is kind of managed. The closer
According
they
to how
get, the
close
closer
they're
they get
getting
to
to
retirement,
retirement. Yeah, I
the
understand.
risk is kind of minimized.
Good.
So I just wanted to make sure the board was aware that there's also a tool. Hopefully some employees are listening and we'll see a
Yes.
little higher participation
Yes.
in this vehicle. I think it's a good way to have some automation in managing your investments and kind of passively having that done.
it is a
on
good
their
way,
behalf.
because if you were personally investing and had a personal investment advisor, and that, in my opinion, that investment advisor was doing his or her job, that person would sit with you every year and go through the questions, right? And so what you're saying is this is kind of an automated way as you're reaching retirement to adjust so that you are more for maintenance of the corpus and less on, the riskier income building, right?
So it has a glide path that
Yeah.
gets more conservative as you go.
Right, gets more-
And Jeff, that's a great point, and it's one I probably should have made earlier to your question as well. So we have offered participants basically every way to do it, right? You
Right.
can do a balanced fund, you can go out and fill out questionnaires and get advice and manage it yourself. You can hire a manager through that same program to manage it for you. Then if you just want to set it and forget it, then you have the target
Target
date
date.
funds to do that as
Right.
well. So somebody can't ever come back and say, well, I never had the opportunity to do anything. We've put every option on the table for them to be able to do it. Or if they just want to pick on their own and use none of it, we've given them options across the asset classes to pick on their own.
And they also have model portfolios.
Right, the balance.
Which
those
are
models.
risk-based model portfolios so really,
Right, thank
it'd
you.
be hard for somebody to come back and say, you didn't give me something I could pick and choose from.
Jeff, to your point, do we have certain times during the year where we are proactive in trying to get this information out to our employees?
Yeah, we actually have talked through education process that we're
Good.
trying to kick off And so we'll try to emphasize some
Right.
investment tools that our employees can use.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones?
Yes, I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. Under the, are these all central health employees?
Yes, they're the enterprise, so it's
So
Central Health, Community Care,
Okay,
Community Care Collaborative, and Sendero.
okay. And my understanding is, it says that under the average account balance active from 2017 to 2018, the balance is sort of on average dropped?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, but you added 70 new employees who started out with a zero
so,
balance.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
that's going to drive that
Yeah.
number down.
Okay, and so is this their active balances for what they have invested in their retirement plan? I want to make sure I'm understanding.
In this retirement plan, they might also have some assets in the 457 plan.
Okay, which is the other question I was gonna ask, is that also for the 457 as well?
No, this is just the retirement plan.
Okay, but if you go over to the 457, these are their investments. So if someone was to left, let's just use the average as an individual. So if someone left tomorrow and they were part of the active, and they had the $42,901, that's what they could leave it in or they could take it out. Okay. And are the employees understanding, well, you've mentioned the education, so the great educational role in helping them to understand what that means. I just retired 2 years ago. Some of this relates to me. It would have been helpful if I knew some of it myself, but so this is very helpful. So I just want to make sure that they are educated and aware of some of the challenges that they face. And this is it, so to speak. So.
We try to make them aware of that, and actually on their quarterly statements and on the website, if they go online, it actually breaks down what their current account value is and what it would be projected to be at age 65 on a monthly basis. So they can see, gosh, is that going to be enough for me to live on at 65 on a monthly basis?
Right, okay, well, good. All right.
Great discussion. Any other questions, comments? Thank you very, very much.
Thank you for having us.
I've got a motion on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion passes. Thank you again.
Thank you guys,
We
appreciate
really
it. Nice to
appreciate
see you this evening.
Okay. Agenda item number 3, receive and discuss and take appropriate action on a presentation of Central Health Fiscal Year 2018 Financial Audit. And we have, oh, there you are, Lisa,
evening,
here
Lisa.
to introduce our guest.
Yeah. Lisa Owens, Vice President of Financial Operations, and happy to introduce
Karen Mellon, I'm the controller for the enterprise.
So we're here tonight to introduce Maxwell Lockenritter. They're going to present the first of 2 presentations on our financial audit, which is wrapping up. Tonight is in draft form. For those of you who've been with us, you will remember that we present Central Health with our 3 component units, which are Community Care, the Community Care Collaborative, and Sendero. And our partners at Maxwell Lockenritter audit both the CCC, Community Care Collaborative, and CUC. Sendero is audited by another third party. So we will be orchestrating all of those presentations. They were at Community Care last night and will be at the CCC board meeting next week. And then we'll return here next Wednesday for you again for additional questions, but for the final presentation. So with that, I'll introduce them, and I'd like to just take a quick moment to thank Karen and the finance team from Central Health and the CCC, as well as Community Care. Phil's here. This has been a great effort, and it's always exciting as we get to the end of this process. So thank you to our team.
Thank you. Appreciate your hard work. Okay, Ms. Veronica Day and Mr. Jimmy Rummel?
Romel, sir.
Rommel.
Yes. So good evening, I'm Jimmy Romel with Maxwell Lock and Ritter. Serve as the audit partner on the Central Health audit, and then Veronica Day is the manager on the engagement. So tonight, as Lisa mentioned, we'll be going through the draft financial statements. We have prepared a PowerPoint presentation, kind of touch on some of the highlights of the draft, and once we're complete, obviously if you have any questions for us, please feel free to ask. So with that, I will turn over to Veronica, who will lead you through our presentation tonight.
Great. Okay, we'll get started. So right here, you'll see that we basically have a summary of what's included in the audit report. And the items that we're going to highlight during this presentation is the independent auditor's report, your basic financial statements, as well as some additions that you have within your notes to your financial statements. And then also the report on internal control and other matters in accordance with government auditing standards. And as Lisa had mentioned earlier, you do have discretely presented component units. So those three are listed here as well, with Community Care Sendero and Community Care Collaborative. So for two of those reports, they have been issued already. Community Care Collaborative has not, but the two that have been issued have unmodified opinions, which are clean opinions. And so we'll be focusing our presentation on Central Health's information. Okay, so here you have your independent auditor's opinion. You have an unmodified opinion for Central Health. And what that means is it's a clean opinion and it's the best opinion that you can receive. We also, you have to audit you under government auditing standards as well. And so there were no deficiencies in internal control that were considered to be material weaknesses. And there were no instances of non-compliance required to be reported under government auditing standards. So if you're looking through your report, then you'll see this. This is right at the beginning, and it starts on page 1, is the independent auditor's report. Okay, so now we'll be moving on to the financial statements. So if you're looking within your report, this would be on page 12. And so here you have this statement of net position. So on the presentation, we have a summary level, but we're just going to go over some of the key changes that happened during the year. So if you're looking at the report, it'll be on page 12. And so if you are looking at the statement on page 12, you'll see on the left-hand side is the primary government, that is Central Health. So then the 3 columns to the right are your component units. So we're only focusing on the left column. So here on the statement of net position, your total assets increased around 7%. You can see that your biggest change was in your non-current assets, which was related to your investment in Sendero. So there was an increase this year of $35 million. That is also disclosed within the footnotes that goes into a little bit more detail related to that. And then when you look at your total liabilities, they decreased around 57%. So majority of what that decrease was related to is that in the prior year, in 2017, you had a payment that you had to make to Seton that you had to accrue for, and that was because the lease was ending, and there was still some discussion of going through getting that new lease during that time period. So as a result, Seton had continued to pay, and you had to kind of hold over on those funds, and because you were going to have to reimburse Seton back once you had the new agreement. And then overall, you had an increase in net position of $35 million, which is an increase of around 14% from the prior year. The next page is the statement of financial position. So that's on page 13. Same thing, left-hand column is Central Health for the primary government. And so here we can see a couple of changes. Your total operating revenues decreased around $18.5 million. And that is directly related. The main thing is the lease revenue that you had from Seton, which was expected. because of the change in the agreement that went into effect in January 2018. You also had a decrease in your operating expenses as well of around 5%. And then your non-operating revenues is where you have your tax revenue in there, and you had an increase of around 11.6 million from the prior year. And so then overall, you can see your ending net position increase of 14% from the prior year, and you ended the year at 288 million. So the other financial highlights that we wanted to talk about, starting on page 15 is where you get into the footnotes of your audit report. And that's really just some more information to the reader about the financial statements that we just went over. So with the footnotes, a lot of them are the same information from the prior year. There's not really significant changes that are happening throughout. There was some additional information for the change in the lease agreement that happened during the year. But we did want to highlight the fact that Central Health's bank balances were fully collateralized at the end of the year. And then also that you are in compliance with, your investments are in compliance with the Public Funds Investment Act. There are additional compliance procedures that we have to go through in order to verify that. You also have outstanding debt of 9.4 million, and around 1 million in principal is due in 2019. And that's just your one bond series that you've had outstanding for a bit. So like I said, there were no significant changes within the footnotes. And then one thing just to be aware of down the line on page 19. So this is the end of footnote 2, which is your summary of significant accounting policies, which is by far your longest footnote that you have in here. And at the end, we talk about recently issued accounting pronouncements. So the one that's sort of coming down the line for you, it's not until 2021, but that is the new lease standard. So that is something that we'll be working with management to look at that information when it becomes, when it has to be implemented in 2021. So that's really all that I have on the report. Oh, and then we'll move on to, there is an additional letter that we have, our governance letter, which is a just a stapled sheet as well. Okay. And so that governance letter is required communication. And so this is something that really provides a summary of the audit. So in here, there were no new accounting pronouncements that were required to be implemented. There were no difficulties that we encountered in performing and completing our audit. There were no adjustments that we had during the audit process, and there were no disagreements with management. And so we also want to extend our thanks as well to Jeff and Lisa and Karen and everybody that assisted with the audit. It is a lot of work to go through this process, and there are a lot of things involved with them having to answer questions and get information for us. So we really do appreciate them getting us the information timely so that we're able to present these reports to you. And then related to internal controls, we did not note any deficiencies in internal control that we consider to be material weaknesses. And so with that, I'll turn it over if there are any questions or anything that you would like us to go into further detail.
Ms. Greenberg?
Just one quick question.
Sure.
Is the entirety full accrual, or do you do any modified accrual, given that we collect property taxes, as far as our county?
It's full accrual.
It's full accrual,
Yes.
even with the general fund and the
Because
property
you guys
tax
are considered to be an enterprise fund,
Right.
which is a business type activity, so that
Right.
is done on a full accrual basis.
That's what I was asking. Okay, so it's done not as a general fund, but the whole, our Central Health as a whole, not our other enterprises. Central Health as a whole is done as an enterprise fund.
Yes.
Jeff, has it always been done that way? Yes. Okay. Just didn't know. Okay. And looking at the change on page 19 is being considered. I assume that what this is getting at is looking at some of these leases as not really being operating leases, but being debt, and looking at that in the future?
Right, it's gonna
Okay, I'm
bring
familiar
things
with
that are now operating, bring those on your balance sheet.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I have one question.
Sure, go ahead.
And I know how challenging the audit is. I don't miss it. I don't miss the audit. Oh, my God. On page 6, it said provided local matching funds to draw over 90% of the total value in the district projects. Are you aware of were there any opportunities for us to leverage our tax dollars that we didn't take advantage of on the other side? Not the district side, but the traditional waiver side?
Let me see. So in management
I
discussion
don't
and
recall us
analysis.
having a lot of IGTs in 2018, or I might be not having a good recollection. So I wasn't sure if y'all are aware of any opportunities for IGT, but we didn't take advantage or leverage our tax dollars to draw down funds.
I mean, sounds like more of an operational item than necessarily what we would focus on.
Okay, well, I just know, because you put that here, one of the operational highlights.
Right, and so but that's part of the management discussion analysis,
Okay.
so that's coming from management of central health, so they can probably shed a little more light on that versus what we could do.
Yeah, so for the Deseret projects, they're performance-based, and I think what we're saying is of all the valuation, we drew over 90% as it relates to participation in that program. We also participate in uncompensated care, so we max out. There are a lot of, I know you're going to know this, what's referred to as the haircut. So there's not enough uncompensated care across the state. So there are what are called haircuts across that. We maximize the intergovernmental transfers related to uncompensated care. And then the last program that we participate in is we're a transferring entity for disproportionate share. And of course, we participate in that to the extent that we're required to put our share up. Now, there are additional programs that we don't participate in that the state offers that other districts may participate in.
No,
But
I was
we
just
either
talking about
don't-
the three that we
Yes.
did we leverage our tax dollars to the full extent that we could?
Absolutely,
And opportunities that are available, and obviously not.
yes. On
haircuts.
the three that we do, to the extent we can, we've sent money to leverage.
That would have been good to see in here, I think, as an operational highlight, that we do leverage as much as we can.
Okay, Ms. Musitor?
This might be it's a procedural question, I guess. How frequent is this audit done? Is it annually?
It's annual, yes.
Okay, that's, thank you.
It's a requirement. One
Okay.
other
Ms.
quick
Greenberg?
question, the
Yes.
manager's discussion and analysis, I assume we'll see that in the final?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Validus?
Yeah, and maybe you can help me out, Jeff. I thought that $35 million that we give to the UT Medical School came out of Central Health's budget.
That's a item that is paid out of the Community Care Collaborative, so.
Is that not, does that not come from our property taxes?
Well, it comes,
I'm sorry.
sorry, so the Community Care Collaborative is funded by three funding sources. You have member payments from Central Health, a member payment from Seton, and then participation in the Deseret projects.
Yes, sir.
Right.
So our budget comes from property taxes.
Central Health's budget comes primarily from property taxes. You have some lease revenue, you have tobacco,
Litigation,
the settlement,
yes.
and then you have some interest income.
So our money, the property tax money, then goes to the CCC, and the CCC pays UT the 35 million? I
So-
thought we did. That's why I'm asking. I just want clarification on it, that's
No,
all.
so the Community Care Collaborative makes the payment to UT, the $35 million. We collect property taxes of, I don't have it right in front of me, but let's say about $180 million. We made a member payment in 2018 of $23 million to the CCC. So there's a portion of the CCC budget, which a portion of that is, a large part of that is property tax, right? So of the $180+ million we collected in property taxes, $23 million was transferred directly to the CCC, the Community Care Collaborative. The rest of it was a member payment either from Seton or Deseret funds that we received from the performance of Deseret projects.
Well, what I'm trying to get to is exactly where's that $35 million coming from? And is it coming, you're telling me $23 million comes from our property taxes that we collect, so it's to see Central Health, because we're the taxing jurisdiction, not the CCC. We give the CCC their money, okay, through the allotments, well, whatever it is, the services that they're doing, we approve their budget, we give them money. In there, are we giving them the $35 million of our taxpayers' dollars to go to the UT Medical School, or is that 23 million, because you brought up 23 million, so the 23 million of the property tax dollars goes to the CCC, so the CCC can give it to UT, and then the rest of that money, because it's a $35 million a year for life, forever, commitment, where does the rest of that money come from?
So if I can just interject for a second.
Well, because I want to see where it is here
So-
in our audit.
Right, are you looking to see it in the background section, something laid out?
Yes, I do. That's what I want to see, because that was a commitment we made to the public.
So your question is, why isn't
Where is
something
this?
laid out?
Where is it
Well,
in here that I can see the $35 million? Because I see here under the CCC collaborative, it says 35 million. That what you just told me is not that.
That's right, the payment to UT is made directly from the Community Care Collaborative, the 35.
They don't receive our tax, they don't receive, they get their money from us.
They get 20, last year, they get a portion of it.
They got a member payment.
So in 2018, they've received 23 million from Central Health, about $60+ million from the Deseret participation, and about, was it 36 million from Seton as a member payment. So that's the,
I'm still asking the 35 million. Where's the $35 million coming from that goes to UT? That's all. It's a very simple
Well,
question.
and I'm trying to give you a simple answer,
Okay,
which is.
I'm sorry.
Which is, there are 3 funding sources. The payments made out of the Community Care Collaborative, and there are 3 funding sources in the Community Care Collaborative. There's not a direct dollar for dollar, here's a dollar that comes into the Community Care Collaborative. All the funds, there are multiple funding sources and multiple payments that are made out of the CCC. So a portion of Central Health funds the CCC makes the payment to UT. So,
I understand that. What I'm saying is if we're giving them 23 million, but they're paying out 35 million, where is the rest of that money coming from?
well, it's coming
Exactly.
from C.
And I'm looking for that in some
Okay.
kind of background
Let
information.
me try again.
Okay, and the only reason I'm asking for that is because when we approved the $35 million, we assumed, the public did, and we're told by countless numbers of campaign supporters that that public dollar was going to come from Central Health. It was going to go to the University of Texas Medical School because they were going to help us provide the services to our targeted population. So I just want to make clear that I understand, because I've struggled with this for a couple of years now. Where exactly is that 35 million coming from?
Okay, so, Mike?
If I may, but I need to ask council, how, this is a budgetary question, can I answer that question underneath this agenda item? Because realizing that
This is the financial.
this is supposed to be an interaction between the auditors and the board, but
So then, if
am
I
I,
can ask.
am I on solid footing
Tell me,
to be able to answer
following
that
our
question?
information, following all the paperwork that you get from our enterprise, from the CC, from here, from us, and from our enterprise members, which includes the CCC, Sendero, and Community Care. Can you see where that $35 million is coming from that is paid to UT? I'm asking you. Ben.
So it's in that, I guess on page 13, the FLAR
I'm on
column,
13.
the Community Care Collaborative. So up in the operating revenue section will be the various funding sources that are funding Community Care Collaborative. So it's all coming in. So there's three main funding sources that's funding ultimately the 35 million that's being paid to UT.
Okay,
But
so
it's a combination of all three of those coming in that makes up the 35 that's then going out.
I know exactly what you're saying, but I want it to be clear that somewhere I can see where it's coming from, because 23,200,000 is coming from Central Health. 153,831 is coming from DSRIP payments. 36,266,490 is coming from Seton. And then personnel services from an affiliate, 635,477. So somewhere in there is the 35 million? Is that what you're telling me?
May I ask a question from an accounting standpoint? So if I'm looking at this from an accounting standpoint, and we look at the Community Care Collaborative column, the CCC, which we're looking at, we see as far as its operating revenues, we have the 23.2 million from Central Health, the 59.1 that's DSRIP, and the 36.2 that's Seton, correct? And that all goes into what I will call just one general fund for the CCC, right? So the way that I would look at it is that all goes in, and if I were trying to do the math, I guess from an accounting standpoint, to figure out the 35 million, you could just look at that pro rata and figure out how much each one of those funders, right, was putting in, and then how much from each one of those funders was going out. I don't know how else you would do it, because it all just goes into that one
Right, it
fund.
all goes in one bucket, so yeah, it's not.
Would that be a way to
Yeah, I
look
mean,
at it?
that's probably a fair way to look at it.
From
but-
a mathematical and accounting standpoint?
Because
Okay,
ultimately,
thank you.
Yeah, all three funding sources are then
Yeah.
paying for all the operating expenses
Right. All
of the
goes into
CCC,
one-
which
one
the
bucket.
largest one, or one of the largest ones being that payment to UT.
Okay.
Ms.
and-
Nixon, did you have something to add? Hold on.
I have a comment. I'm looking at the CCC's budget. Don't they have a line of 35 million that goes?
Yeah.
No, from our budget, when they budget it. Isn't there a 35 million line?
No.
No.
So the UT service agreement. What's the
Are you
expense?
talking about the audit?
Well, in terms of, I'm not looking at the audit, I'm sorry, I was looking at the CCC's budget.
About the audit.
So we have to stay
And
on
with the audit.
topic with what is being presented, which is the audit.
Right.
I think we have been pointed to page 13 of our presentation, which shows a $35 million operating expense, which is the payment for the University of Texas affiliation agreement.
That's correct.
And Manager
Valadez.
Valadez, thank you, you're wanting a breakdown of how that $35 million, where it comes from.
Where exactly is it coming from?
And I think Manager Greenberg asked a good clarifying question. Perhaps another one would be, is it customary for us to show where those funds come from in such an audit report?
Well, once again, it's all going into one pot, so it is showing the funding sources.
Exactly.
So this is the way I look at it. Because this is what I know. There are two people that are married. They contribute to the household expenses, this, that, and the other. They get a divorce. So we want to know who exactly has been making what payments.
Community properties.
So, because in Texas, we have community property. However, there is a need to be able to break that down at some point, because a judge is going to have to deliberate who's going to get what. So as far as I'm concerned, what I want to see is if you're telling me that the 23,200,000 is all going to the 35 million. So we're not paying the CCC for anything other than the 35 million that goes to UT. I don't know that that's true,
It's not-
okay?
It's not
It
true.
doesn't make sense.
Ms.
So,
Green-
so with respect to the others, the district payments, I'm sure that the district payments would allow for that money to be spent on the support of the medical school, okay, legally. And that's why I'm assuming it's not disaggregated. And then the revenue from Seton is also supporting, some of that money is going to the medical school.
Yes.
Because they also have their own external agreements that we are not privy to.
That's correct.
But with respect to when we try and ask the question, the money that UT is spending, are they helping us with our targeted population? that $35 million is going to be coming from what percent, I guess, what amount of money is coming from where, so that we can know that money is, okay, that's where they're getting their money
Ms.
from,
Valadez.
and this is how that money is being spent,
Ms. Valadez?
so that we know that we're completing our mission.
Ms. Valadez?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, yes, sir.
Manager Greenberg attempted to answer that question with her statement before.
Well, she repeated what I said, because
No.
I said the numbers.
No,
Okay.
no,
No,
what-
you just said it went into the general fund.
Let
No, no.
Manager
Okay,
Greenberg.
what I'm-
excuse me.
No, and I'm sure that I was not as clear as I could have been. What I'm saying is, yes, all the money goes into one bucket.
Right.
And so mathematically, the way that I look at it from a math standpoint, accounting standpoint, is you would look at what share, what percent each one of these contributed to the total bucket.
To the whole pie.
To the whole pie, and then you would apply that percentage to what they then went out in the way of the 35 million.
So
Is
you're,
that correct?
I mean, that's,
well, you're
that's
saying
the
that,
way-
but is that exactly what is being done?
It's the
So I can
only
know.
way.
That's the only way you
it's
can
the
get at it.
only
I got
way
it, I
you
got it.
can get at it.
So if we were to, I'll go backwards, I'm
Because
gonna
it's
back
in one
into an
bucket.
answer. So if I back it into the answer, their revenues is 119,255,798, okay? If I break up these four, or you just use three buckets, not the fourth one, which is personnel revenues received from an affiliate. I'll just use three, and divide that so that it makes out the 35 million based on the contributions.
That's
Right,
correct.
that's what I'm
That's
saying.
correct. That's the
what
only
I'm
way you're
saying.
gonna get
That's
at
the
your
only way
number.
mathematically
Now I
you can
get it,
get at it.
okay.
Yep, it's the
But-
only way.
But for accounting purposes, on a piece of paper, I don't know if that has ever been, we've never done that before, we've never broken up that this is where the $35 million is coming from.
That's the only way you can intuit it
No,
from
I
this.
know we can assume that, but on in black and white. So we would have a statement down here that says, a percentage based on the contribution is going to be what is contributing to, included in that $35 million.
I think the way that I would look at it, and Manager Greenberg's right, there's just, mathematically, there's a way to infer that.
Right.
But going back to your example, if there's a married couple, they
We have to
both
do a forensic
work,
audit.
they both work, they contribute to one joint account, and then you pay the utility bill, who's paying the utility bill?
That's right.
So.
You have to go to
you
the
could-
checks.
You could, well, so you could argue who's putting in more, maybe they're paying more proportionally.
Yeah.
How is it split up? And so what Manager Greenberg's referring to is mathematically, we could calculate something like
Yes.
that if you
Yes.
wanted to do it. That's a way to infer it, but you can make different inferences.
No, I like that. I just wanted to know whether or not we can ever make a statement, or just down in here say, like we do for anything else, we just put a little blurb that says, okay, the 35 million is coming from.
Let's
Based
hear
on
what
the
Manager
percentage.
Jones has to contribute, please.
No, I agree with what you're saying and what you're trying to get at, because from the general public, what they see is 35 million, were promised 35 million was provided. When we go into the nuances of trying to explain it through an accounting principle, it gets muddied. And so us as board of managers having to be accountable for that, we need to be able to, as articulate as we can, explain to them what the $35 million are. And as helping us to do that is what I think we're trying to get at, is how do we simply explain it to them?
Yes, sir. Because I'm assuming here, we're assuming that these three partners will forever be there. But what happens when that changes? Should something happen in the future?
Yeah.
Okay, how are we going to memorialize how these $35 million should be included in, or paid to, or, paid to UT based out of what?
Are you saying that because it's our obligation, right?
Yes.
And not Seton's obligation?
It's
and
not even the
not-
CCC's obligation,
yeah,
it's
right.
ours. That's why I'm
That's
saying,
okay.
when we're the ones that were appointed, we're the ones that are we're the ones that are held liable for how we spend our money. And so I just wanted to get to a clear picture for the public as to where this money is coming from. So
Should
that,
our partner come back and say, we were never on the hook for this
That's
35
right.
million?
That's
That's
right.
all you, but you
That's
didn't pay
right.
enough to
That's
cover
right.
it. Okay, I get what you're saying.
so that's the only reason I'm
Ms. Greenberg.
bringing this up. Thank you.
So, yes, and I think that's a very important point because since there are not sub-accounts, since it's one account, I think historically we could go back and apply the mathematical ratios that we were talking about. Going forward, it would depend on if we had different partners in the future, what contractual
That's right.
agreements we had with them, and then you'd have to look going forward and
And-
apply the math to those.
And the reason I'm looking at that is because the reality may be that that will change, and it could change soon. We don't know what else is gonna happen. But just for the public to know that we as a board of managers understand
Right.
fully exactly how that money is being provided to the
Right.
University of Texas Medical School, because we know what they're supposed to be providing for us.
Okay?
This is another question for another time.
Yes.
So I think we need to discuss it.
I understand. I think we do need to discuss it, but with respect to how is that being included in here, if I would believe that if we made some kind of a statement, little star, asterisk, whatever.
And I think that the question is it appropriate for a financial audit to
Right, so-
contain such a statement?
The issue with that would be if anything you're putting on the face of a statement we'd have to do additional procedures to get comfortable enough to
Right.
provide assurance that that number was exactly
Yeah.
what's being presented.
Exactly.
Right.
Which, there's definitely some gray area there. I don't think it's as clear as, other than just kind of, like you said, doing the math and kind
Backing
of
in.
Right.
inferring what that amount would be. Could you ever get to the exact amount? Maybe, maybe not. There could be some additional information that's provided in some form of communication that's not technically part of the audit document, but could be a supplement saying this is what, and this is kind of based on whatever you contribute this year, this is Central Health's proportionate share of that
An
funding.
idea.
Ms.
Because
Greenberg, Ms. Greenberg has an idea. Hold on.
It may not be a good one, but I have an idea. I understand that you'd have to do additional work to include that in the notes. Is this perhaps something that could be included in the management, the MD&A, the
MD&A.
discussion, and
I mean, it's
Jeff?
possible.
We could, so we could look at that, that's a possibility. We could also go back in our budget document, and as we get actual numbers from prior years, we could go back in. But we have a lot more flexibility in the
Right.
budget document.
Yes,
So
we
we can
do.
say something to the effect of, based on fiscal year 18 actual numbers, management's done a calculation
Right.
that looks at an allocation basis, talk a little bit about what
Yes.
we did.
Yes.
So I think those are two options that we could
okay,
look at.
so can we explore those two options?
I would agree with her, and the reason I would agree with her, I agree with her, just because it's a good idea. But every year, the number will change based on the various parties, whoever they may be's
And we'll
contributions.
cover that.
And we just want to make sure that somewhere it is memorialized, that's all.
Thanks. Thank you very much. I
Oh,
think
no,
that's a great
thank you all
comment.
for
Oh, no, it's important.
allowing me to.
Any
bring that
other
up.
discussion about
Thank
the
you.
audit? Any other questions? Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And we will see you next week when we vote to approve. And
Thank
if there are questions or concerns between then, please make those concerns known, and we will get answers. Okay? Thank you very much. Ms. Meester?
I texted you.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, item number 4, receive and discuss a report of the December 2018 financial statements for Central Health, and Ms. Lisa Owens.
Good evening, Lisa Owens, Vice President, Financial Operations. Back again, present tonight the preliminary December 2018 financial report for Central Health. A few highlights. These are preliminary. Again, until we finish the audit, a lot of that information rolling into this current year is still preliminary. But we are in December, we're in January, but in December, as you all know, is when our tax collection really picks up. We have collected 41.3% of the tax levy at $82 million. We also had a significant IGT in December, And we also made a member payment, and we also made a transfer to Sendero for risk-based capital. So I'll walk through those as we go through the financial statements. So current assets at $229 million. Non-current assets at $118 million, and you'll see that there is an additional $20 million that increased our paid-in capital to Sendero in the non-current assets. And our capital assets are at $114 million. Our total assets as of December 31st were at $462 million. Our liabilities, current liabilities are at $121 million. We do include the deferred tax revenue. Tax revenue is recognized on October 1st, as it is due. As I said, we had collected 41.3% of the tax levy. So in prior years, we've collected about 40% as of December. And then we'll get another large January contribution. Those taxes are due January 31st, and they come to us immediately. We had the capital lease obligation of $8.3 million for total liabilities of $130 million. Our net assets at $332 million for a total liabilities and net assets at $462 million. Sources and uses through December, again, that's the first quarter of the year, so about 25% way through the year. As I mentioned, this month we had $70 million collected for a total year-to-date of $82 million in tax revenue. Again, in January, we'd look to see, I looked at our past couple years average, we usually get about 44% of the tax revenue in January and then 10% in February. So we'll see the bulk of that come in the next 2 months. Our healthcare delivery was at $41.7 million in December, and I'll go through that on the next slide. Our administrative program at $536,000, $1.4 million year-to-date, and tax collection expenses at $704,000 year-to-date. So our total uses year-to-date at $60,300,000, and our excess sources over uses at 25, again being preliminary as we need the final results from fiscal 2018 to have our carry forward for our contingency reserve. So you'll see that get updated next month. And then going through healthcare delivery, as I mentioned, we had intergovernmental transfers. The details are on slide 7, but our uncompensated care program transfers were in December to about $10.4 million. Other provider costs were, we did make a $10 million member payment to the CCC. Our budget for this year is $34 million. That was our first payment, so the total year-to-date is $10 million. Total IGTs and provider costs at $20.5 million for the month of December and $34.5 million for the year. Healthcare delivery operating costs at $1.6 million year-to-date. And other costs, we still show the campus redevelopment, which includes the operating the campus now. We operate a significant portion of the campus now, which year over year is significantly higher due to that. At this time last year, we had not quite taken over the operations, but you'll see that start to equal out year-to-date and monthly as we go forward. And then the ACA enrollment and subsidy. That includes enrollment services as well as the CHAP program, the Central Health Assistance Program. The new program for Sendero starts January 1st. So we'll see that start to increase next month. And then finally, we are just showing the reserves and transfers. As I mentioned, a $20 million transfer was made in December to Sendero. And that is, as budgeted, the $20 million. So total year-to-date healthcare delivery at $58 million, just under 25% of total budget for the year. Last slide just shows you a summary of our intergovernmental transfers. We have transferred $24 million in the DISH program. DISH has had 2 advances, and the uncompensated care had an initial advance at $10.4 million in December. And I am happy to answer any questions.
Okay, members, any questions for Ms. Owens? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Okay, agenda item number 6, accept a charitable contribution of $25,000 from the estate of Gary Lee Child for Central Health Premium Assistance Program. And Jeff will present that.
Yes, thank you. I'm excited about bringing this item. This is an actual donation from the estate of Gary Lee Child. Chapter 281 requires, a hospital district requires Central Health to approve on behalf of the district acceptance of gifts to be held in trust. I've included a memo in your packet that cites the specific section 281.055. The uses of the funds per the donor would be to, she was providing the donation on behalf of providing care through Sendero. Her former husband, prior husband, is deceased and was a Sendero member. My understanding of one of the rationales of the donation was the appreciation that they had for the care that they received through Sendero. And so their wishes were that we utilize the funds to provide health care for people that may not be able to have health care. So we're requesting approval of acceptance of the $25,000, and we anticipate using it in the premium assistance program related to fulfilling the wish of the donor.
Have a motion?
Yes, please, Ms. Greenberg.
I move that the committee recommend that the board accept a charitable donation of $25,000 from the estate of Gary Lee Child to the Central Health Premium Assistance Program.
Second?
I have a motion by Ms. Greenberg. I have a second by Ms. Valadez. Any discussion? Well, let me just go around.
I may have to abstain on this because I do know Ms. Ann Charles.
Okay.
And so I just want to note that.
Okay.
I just want to publicly acknowledge and thank her for this. I think this is incredibly generous, so thank you.
Yes.
And
Ms. Greenberg?
likewise, I just wanted to ask what kind of thank you would be coming from Central Health in recognition from all of us for this very heartwarming and charitable gift to help those who cannot afford their care.
So we actually had some internal conversations on that. We wanted
I
to
bet you
get
did.
through this
Okay.
process step, but I think having a resolution
That would be
adopted by the full board at some point in
I
the
agree.
future to memorialize this and thanking them,
And-
I think would be a very nice gesture.
And I would want to make the offer if a family member wants to attend, and if not, I understand this can be emotional, but
Sure.
if a family member or members want to attend, we could invite them and see their preference.
Agree.
Thank you.
In addition to that, I would want that proclamation or resolution, whatever it may be, to be presented to the Travis County Commissioners Court and to the City of Austin, because we want them to know exactly how much we appreciate Sendero and what Sendero's mission is to helping us accomplish ours. And that, I don't know, to my knowledge, I was not been on the board for 13 years. I've never known anybody to give Central Health money for the use of someone in need to receive direct services. I've never known that. I think this is a first, Dr. Samoda.
Well, it is the first for Central Health, but it's been done at Invo Care.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, 2 of my patients have left money to Invo Care for.
So I think
this
this,
exact reason.
to me, this is historical. Maybe we can eventually have our little own foundation, Central,
discussed
of people who will donate. When I die, you can have my money, whatever that is, to Central Health. But I also want to thank the widow of Gary Childs, and I would like to extend to her our deepest condolences for his passing. and appreciation of her living gift to us. We fought very hard for Sendero to remain alive, and I think that this shows exactly what it, in reality, what it means to individual families that struggle with death, dying, and disease and illness in our community in a very real way. Thank you.
Jeff, did you?
Yeah, I just want to add an explicit quote from the correspondence that we had, and it's in the memo, but I just wanted to read it. It says, along with the contribution, Ms. Child wrote, "Thank you for the opportunity to help others lead a healthy life." So I just wanted to get that on the record, that that's was what she wanted to convey. So,
Well, thank you. You actually took the words right out of my mouth, because that's what I was actually going to quote. I thought that was probably the most touching part of reading about this contribution, and I echo everyone's sentiment with regard to Ms. Childs, and I know that there will be a number of people that will benefit from that donation. So, thank you very much. Okay, with that, I have a motion on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? I have Manager Jones abstaining. Motion passes. Okay, item number 10. Confirm the next regular committee meeting date, time, and location. The next Central Health Board of Managers Budget and Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for February 20th, 2019 at 5:30 p.m. Central Health Administrative Offices, 1111 East Cesar Chavez Street, Austin, Texas, 78702. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Greenberg, a second from Ms. Valadez. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion passes. Adjourned. Thank you very much.
Right.
I do, tonight